Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. So, as many of you know, my name is George Moose, and I have the great privilege of serving as the acting president of the United States Institute of Peace. And in that role, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to what for us is a very special event. I'm calling it the graduation of our first class of John Lewis Fellows. And so this really marks the inaugural cohort of our John Lewis Fellows, and we could not have had a better class of fellows joining this time around. To those who may not know, Congressman Lewis introduced the Gandhi King Scholarly Exchange Initiative Act. Actually, he introduced it multiple times before it finally passed the Congress in December of 2020 with strong bipartisan support. And it was that act that gave to USIP the mandate to create the Gandhi King Global Academy to provide a whole range of support and training to peacebuilders all around the world. It is a privilege to have partnered with the John and Lillian Miles Lewis Foundation to help honor Representative John Lewis's legacy and to ensure that his teachings have an impact on the work of peacebuilders all over the world. And I think it's also important to recall that this institute had no stronger supporter in the Congress than Representative Lewis. He annually introduced to Congress the letter asking his colleagues to support the Institute and its appropriation. And we are extremely grateful for that contribution that he has made to the establishment and the sustainability of this institution. And that only adds to our sense of pride in being able to play a role in honoring his leadership and his legacy. This event this afternoon is a true testament towards that effort, whereby the fellows will share with us their experiences over the last month and a half or so, and reflect on how the legacy of Congressman Lewis may shape their own work when they return to their communities. During their time here at USIP, the fellows have engaged in a variety of training workshops and special events that have exposed them to our peacebuilding network and prepared them, we hope, with some useful knowledge, experience, tools, skills, with which we are confident they will be able to apply when they return to their homes. The fellows also recently returned from a moving trip to Georgia and Alabama, where they explored the important sites in the U.S. Civil Rights Movement and the roots of nonviolent action. A highlight of their trip was the opportunity to learn about Congressman Lewis's local as well as international impact. And we are indeed eager to hear from the fellows today about their experiences and the knowledge they acquired during their fellowship, and how the legacy of Congressman Lewis has influenced their thoughts and how it might shape their approach to peacebuilding when they return to their own communities. But first, I wanted to extend a special welcome to the leadership of the John and Lillian Miles Lewis Foundation. We are delighted and honored to have with us today Ms. Detria Austin Everson, the Foundation's Chief Executive Officer for more than 20 years. Ms. Austin Everson has had a remarkable career in nonprofit leadership in roles involving community service, healthcare, and affordable housing. She served for 8 years as the founding executive director of the Martin Luther King Senior Community Resource Collaborative. And her wealth of experience, together with her passion for service, continued to strengthen the John Lewis Foundation. Also with us today, or will be arriving shortly, is Mr. Michael Collins, the board chair of the John and Lillian Miles Lewis Foundation. And Mr. Collins knew Congressman John Lewis probably better than anyone in the room, having served as his chief of staff and floor assistant for almost 20 years. And following the passing of Congressman Lewis, Mr. Collins was tapped to serve as the special assistant to President Biden and director of public engagement and intergovernmental affairs for Vice President Kamala Harris. On a personal note, I just wanted to share with you that my wife Judith and I spent a week in Georgia and Alabama in late April, following many of the same footsteps that our fellows were retracing only last week, from Atlanta to Montgomery to Selma and finally to Birmingham. And I can tell you it was a moving and indeed a humbling experience. In the 1960s, I was an undergraduate student on the campus of Grinnell College in Iowa, a campus known for its social and political activism and engagement. And I was also an American Studies major. And indeed, one of the first papers I wrote in my American history class was about Plessy versus Ferguson. And so I thought I knew something of the history of that period and of the civil rights movement. But what I learned during our week-long journey from Atlanta to Montgomery to Selma to Birmingham was how little I truly understood and appreciated about that history. It's one thing to experience history through the dry words written on the page. It's quite another to be in the presence of those who actually live that history. It's one thing to get a sense of the breadth of the civil rights movement. It's another to understand how much courage it took for leaders and activists like John Lewis to stand up and march forward in the face of the terror and the brutality that was being directed at them. And beyond their incredible courage, what my wife Judith and I learned during that journey was just how strategic and intentional these leaders, like John Lewis and Martin Luther King Jr., were in their thinking and planning, how conscious they were about the images and the messages that they were seeking to project, how savvy they were about the role and the use of the media, and how disciplined they were in the use of nonviolent action. Their goal was not merely to protest or to gain attention. The goal was to advance the cause of political and social justice in very tangible and meaningful ways, such as the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. There is much in that history and that experience from which we all can learn, including those who have been involved in recent protest movements here across the country. So without further ado, let me turn the microphone over to the Chief Executive Officer of the Foundation, Ms. Detria Austin Everson. Please.
Good afternoon. Ambassador Moose, thank you so much for your reflections and your gracious support for all of the work that is being done here. I came into the position of President and CEO of the John and Lillian Miles Lewis Foundation in November of 2023, and it is a distinct privilege of mine to operate in this role. Thank you all for being here today. Our Good Trouble Talks is a program that's a part of our original public programming that the foundation created. One, it's a list of curated interviews presented in diverse communities across America. We partner with colleges, activists, and like-minded institutions such as the U.S. Institute of Peace, as well as other organizations. And our goal is to simply spotlight individuals who've committed their work, their art, and their lives to making a difference and to building bridges and crossing bridges. And so today we're honored to be with you. We're drawing upon the lessons of Congressman John Lewis and his wife Lillian Miles Lewis, who used talks to explore contemporary issues And today we're using that to discuss the tools and methods and how to affect change, take direct action, and replicate outcomes. Ultimately, our goal with the Good Trouble Talks is to celebrate, educate, and to motivate while developing the next generation of inspired leaders. And we are honored that this conversation today will be added to our list of Good Trouble Talks. So thank you all for having us here. On behalf of my board of directors, our chairman, Michael Collins, it has been our honor and privilege to work with you and to greet and meet the first cohort of the John Lewis Peace Fellows this year. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Spoiler alert, I am not one of the fellows, but I am really honored to be here. My name is Imani Cheers, and I currently serve as an associate professor of digital storytelling just up the street at George Washington University. It is truly, truly an honor to be able to be here today to not only introduce the fellows, but to moderate a conversation where hopefully we can all not only take away from their incredible, incredible lives, but also find ways in which we can connect. Because if the point really is, how can we not only build those bridges, but have the bravery to cross them? So first, I'd like to introduce Mr. James Komenji. He is currently, and I'm not going to read their bios, so don't put all that pressure on me, because they are extensive. So when I call your name, just please come up and have a seat. But Mr. James Komenji from Papua New Guinea. We can clap. Yeah. This is a celebration, everyone. We got some stuff to talk about, but we're here to celebrate. Miss Aaliyah B. Adam from the Philippines. Miss Madeline Messeno Avigon from Haiti. Miss Farah Bazouar from Jordan. Miss Alba Poroy from Venezuela. And definitely, there's no last, there's no least, but Mr. Alois Manwa from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So thank you. We good? Fine, we're good. Yeah, we all have mics, so we don't have to pass anything, so that's convenient. Again, congratulations. This is so exciting. So I'd like to just kick off our conversation this afternoon by asking each of you to go down and to summarize in 3 words the transformative nature of this experience. You're sitting closest to me, so you're going to have to start. No pressure, right?
Yeah. A great learning experience.
Okay. I like that. Great learning experience. I'll take it. Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
It was an 3 words: empowered, inspired, and challenged experience.
Okay. I like challenge. That's important. Yes, ma'am.
Courage, message, and transformation.
Okay.
I would say troubling, provoking, but also rich.
Ooh, that's good. I think you're good.
This one?
Oh, yeah.
For me, remarkable, enlightenment, and also challenging.
Okay. And sir?
For me, it's humility, reconciliation, and globalization.
Ooh. And so, just because that's the last word, and so now it's the top of mind, but globalization, that's such a heavy word. It's like gentrification in DC. You're like, am I going to offend somebody? I don't know, but it's accurate, and so I'm not sure. But when you say globalization, can you expand on that for us?
Yeah, one thing is that Americans are really lucky because the problems are here in the US, but also the solution is also here. This is the sense of John Lewis. John Lewis was the solution for the problem that exists in America, but he was also American. So everything is here. But the vision of John Lewis was also to include other countries in the movement, to benefit other countries' legacy, and was like thinking the world like the image of a home where rooms, countries represent rooms, and under one roof, we are all one family.
Yeah.
So that vision is also, that brought us here as countries to also benefit from that legacy.
Oh, that was good. I hope someone's taking notes because that was pretty amazing. When I really think about just following up that this notion of part of the problem, but then also owning that we can also be part of the solution. Each of you come from incredibly rich and diverse, and also like here in the US, kind of complicated countries. And so I would just assume that, would each of you call yourselves an activist? In your bios, not everyone lists activists, so I don't like to impose that phrase or that term or the heaviness also of that on you, but I'm curious, would you consider yourselves activists? Yes, couple? Put it this way, who would not consider themselves an activist? Even better. Oh, I see. I know you're jumping in there.
I do not definitely consider myself an activist.
You don't? Okay.
I don't see what I do as. I don't like the framing of activism. I just see myself in other framing, but I've never seen myself. It's only when I came here that people start to call me as an activist. So it's a new identity. I did not embrace it. I did not took it fully, but I'm just learning and unpacking this whole concept. Don't ask me where do I label myself.
You know
right
that's
now.
coming next.
Because I don't know.
Okay, we don't know if. I would think you all would consider yourselves community leaders.
Yeah.
Is that a more comprehensive term?
Well, I think that also activists, you can be silent activist.
Sure.
And what you do, you don't have to, like for instance, in my context, the community members, they would say that, well, we can take on the street, but who will hear us? So that means that they're going things horizontally, silently, until they have the strength enough to make it to the street or to make themselves be heard. So sometimes, silently you could be doing activism.
Well, I like to think that, moving my son, he's 10, he likes to move silent like the G in lasagna. It's like a 4th grade joke that I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. I was like, okay, I'll take that. But you don't always have to be the loudest person in the room. You don't have to be the loudest in the space to have a really great impact, right? Okay. I'm curious, and if you all would like to share, I had the pleasure of sitting in on a bit of your reflective conversation on Friday from your trip. And I'd just love to know in this space, has anyone actually taken that civil rights tour or been to any of the spaces from Atlanta to Selma, Montgomery, et cetera? Just a quick show of hands, anyone? So when we mention that, there's a couple people, right? Amazing. And so you all had this incredible, dare I say, culminating trip of this experience. And I got to listen to some of your reflections, and I would love for, although if you want to read the whole thing, we'll listen. If you want to share a little bit about what were some of the really highlights in the moments that when you experienced on that tour that you took about 2 weeks ago.
I would like to jump.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to jump first. Short. I want to go back to Mr. Ambassador works when he was saying that something is when you learned about papers, about, studies, about formal studies in the university or in the college. And something different is when you got to the place and you feel the place. And you also keep in touch with the people who lived their experience. It's really completely different. So I can resume my experience with these words. I perfectly resonate with this, because for me was really remarkable to confirm the John Lewis profile from different point of view, with different people we will in touch with. With different people who were really close to him, to his family, people from the university, people from churches, for example, from Christian church or from the Jewish church, people, philanthropists. So every one of them gave us different perspective, but at the same time, a common perspective about him, about his humility, about his commitment, about his love for people, about his really profound commitment as a public service, as a person who was always willing to get in touch with everybody around him. So for me, it only confirmed to me, I'm talking about specific to John Lewis, of course, because I think it's the core of this conversation. For me, confirmed to me the sense of him and his genuinity as a person. So it was my best learning. About himself. Yeah.
Amazing. And I'm assuming, because I know Margot well, did you all have any pre-homework? Was there anyone required to read? Was there some biographies, maybe a film or two watched there before you went? Or did you go in being I've heard of Selma, I've heard of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, however, Bloody Sunday, I wasn't taught this in my home country. Everyone was fully versed.
No, Margot, she made sure that we were very busy before going there, so no worries about that. We had a clear idea, but what Elba was saying is true. Yeah. Going there was extremely different. Experiencing just being there. And before giving my reflection about that, and since we were talking about Margot and the team. I just want to say very quickly thank you for Casey, Margot, and Mike, because they went above and beyond to make this as meaningful and rich experience as possible. Mike, you will always be the man who took me to Buc-ee's, and this is the most meaningful thing in my life. So thank you so much. And I also want to thank Israel, Palestine, and the Region program, Caroline, Hisham, Muna, and of course Robert and Lucy for giving me this opportunity to be here. And lastly, I want to thank Detria. Her presence in this trip was extremely important. The side conversations that we had helped me a lot in connecting the dots and having a bigger picture. So thank you so much. When it comes to about this trip and about this whole experience in general, I think when we are talking about a civil movement that fundamentally changed the course of history in the most powerful country in the world, and John Lewis was one of the key players who shaped this movement. There were a lot of lessons to learn from his legacy and from his life. But for me, the most important lesson is how John Lewis had a very sophisticated understanding of power. And for me personally, I struggle with this concept. I think it's very elusive and complex. But then I see, and I learned how John Lewis, he grasped this concept very well. He knew his role as an individual or as part of a collective, how to deal with power, how sometimes when and how the right time to construct and deconstruct these systems and structures. And at some point you could see him, putting himself out there, risking his life to challenge the status quo, how he, encouraged mobilization and encouraged everyone, to come to make the change that they want. But at the same time, then other points of his life that he was actually part of the system working from within to achieve justice. And for me, just learning about how this person worked, no matter where he was, whether he was inside or outside the system, he actually did that without compromising his integrity, without compromising his values. He stayed committed to nonviolence, which for me, again, it's a very powerful concept. When you really think about it, when you don't have any options left, and just to have this commitment to nonviolence, it takes a lot of strength and a lot of power. So for me, I think when I reflect about John Lewis, I think that his legacy provide more of a roadmap for all civil society organizations all around the world, but especially in the Middle East, especially in the context of Palestinian-Israeli or Arab-Israeli context, that we can learn a lot how to engage with power. Because I say engage because not necessarily defy or challenge, or just to engage with power, how to stay committed to nonviolence and how to stay, no matter where we are, just to keep true to our values and what we believe in.
It's amazing. Thank you. Your colleagues, would you like to jump in?
Thank you. I would normally take on a trip with an open mind to try to learn new things. Coming here to the John Lewis Fellowship and taking on the big trip, I try to compare the situations back home that I work in and the situations that John Lewis had to go through. And I saw a lot of similarities. I picked up ideas on how I could go back home and address those. A big example I've seen is in how under the civil rights movement, there's a lot of different violence that has happened. And that has all been extracted and displayed. It's only when you take it out and display it and talk about it that we manage to address the issues. People tend to understand about it. I come from Highlands tribe that's embroiled and trapped in tribal violence. And we just live with the name tribal fights. In this tribal fighting, within the tribal fights, there's rape and murder and arson and kidnap and there's tortures and all of that happening. But our governments tend to use the word tribal fight and assume that it's something of the past. This is a challenge that I have picked up, and I need to go back home and try to expose all of this so that the mindset of governments and people in positions of power and influence change. That's one big thing I've learned. I also have realized that similar to our environment, we have trauma. Yeah. Our tribal violence communities, tribal violence that we have is being promoted by people living in trauma. Yeah. And going through the trips, I've also felt that there was. I've also assessed that there's effort by champions like ourselves trying to address the issue of the young people growing up not connected to the history, being proud of it. So I heard a story of a lady, a teacher, who is taking children from schools to the museums and letting them to connect with the history, and so that they could grow up guided by the history. And I think that's also an effort that we've done, tried back in my province. We have mobilized young people to play futsal, a mini version of soccer, and they kick the soccer ball around, and usually it's boys and girls playing together. And then each time they kick the ball, they would say, kick violence out. So kids were along the road in the schools, kick violence out all over the place. Yeah, it was working until we got defeated again by tribal violence. Yeah, so there are similarities there. I was overwhelmed really by going into the museum and seeing all of that displayed, the violence that has happened to people. And I reflect on our people back in the province where there's violence happening. Yeah, and it's gangs with arms terrorizing families, and we're continuously displaced. And it's similarities. I also was happy to hear during our visit to the Jimmy Carter Center, and hearing from the video we watched, towards the end, I heard, if there's a situation, if there's an issue, and if nobody's doing it, I'll do it. And that was just me. It's patience that gives me, sometimes I say it's madness that drives me, but it's really patient. Patient. Even when we don't get the support, even when there are roadblocks and challenges and even threats on our own lives, we still keep on pushing. Going on the trip and reading the first page of Crossing the Bridge, I read of John Lewis, a man who appreciated his life, who has done so much. He's also aware that life ends. And he has called for a younger generation to continue the fight. So he has called and then guided of the issues that would come. But he has also commissioned for them to go ahead and be a good troublemaker, keep the fight going. Going out of here, I feel I am commissioned to go back and continue. If nobody does it, I'll keep on doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd love to hear from your other colleagues, but I think I just want to, you said something that really resonated with me, is your patience. And I feel like in the fight against injustice, in particular using nonviolent resistance, patience is critical. Mm-hmm. Patience is critical to peace building. Mm-hmm. War and conflict is easier, but to have patience to listen to the person who might be of different tribe or ethnicity or religion or gender is what we all could use a little more patience. So thank you, sir. I know we have a couple more that would like to share.
Aside from those learnings, which I can also resonate, I'd also want to share that the trip that we had, the American civil rights movement really echoed in my people in the Bangsamoro region in the Philippines, with the ongoing struggle of self-determination, and with John Lewis quoted when he said, "Never ever be afraid to make a noise and challenge the status quo and do trouble, necessary trouble, but good trouble." And as I said, it's been really, it challenges me to actually share and re-echo these learnings when I return back in the Philippines, because the ongoing struggles that we are experiencing in the region, in my region, is quite similar with what we've witnessed with this tour and what John Lewis have seen through all his movements. And the learning from that is very important for me is that we have not yet reached those extreme level that we've seen, that John Lewis have experienced those time when they were experiencing segregation and lynching as well. And my country have not reached that far, which I think is very important for us to realize that we can still drive and guide our people in the country to actually take part in those issues that we are experiencing right now and be part of the solution that we all want to thrive, the country that we want to see. And so really blessed and thankful for the opportunity that the USIP and the John and Lillian Miles Lewis Foundation have extended to us in order for us to have these learnings. It may sound simple sometimes, but then how we've been moved and we've been challenged and going back, applying these learnings that we've got, is something we can be proud of, and hopefully we can share it to the Institute and also to the foundation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Madame, Monsieur.
Yeah, we have a lot to say because. But what I can say, John Lewis was such a person, very complex, very complex. Up to now, I'm trying to learn how to understand him better. I discovered, so when we talk to the people on the ground, everyone coming back to the notion of values, such as humility. He said he was a very humble person. And you can feel that when he's talking about, he's not shy talking about his background. So he can give value to his background in a sense. It's not just coming from Troy, from somewhere, that gives you value, a certain value. So you can still make a change wherever you come from. So even when thinking about the civil rights movement, he's not seeing it as an end itself. He said the end of civil rights movement is reconciliation. So he tried also to push further, saying that no children born violent. So they born innocent, then they find a system that made them violent perpetrators. So we have to reconcile with those people. So when I reflect about my own contexts, where there is a lot of violence, a lot of conflict, and we as activists, so we are trying to be part of the solution. But we should be able to really push in a sense of reconciliation, how we are reconciling for peace building. So since we are not convinced that reconciliation can bring lasting, sustainable peace, we will just see violence repeating in the sense of cycle. So how do we break the cycle of violence? By borrowing from John Lewis this courage of saying, okay, my enemy, we can make peace, we can reconcile. Yeah, we can talk about our past in a different way, so that our aim is to build the nation, to build the community, to see peace for everyone. Yeah.
That's so profound. And so I'm curious in terms of a couple of more tangible takeaways. When I think, as I mentioned, I'm on faculty at GW and I teach a lot of advocacy related work. And one of the films that I've been sharing with my students for a number of years now is Freedom Riders. And Freedom Riders is a documentary film from PBS that really explored, in particular, when college students, John Lewis being one of them, well, before he was a congressman, he was just a young, very passionate man, and to see how young people, and I look at the spring, really fall, and spring, in particular 2024, here in the United States, where young people all around the country were engaging in a point of resistance around a variety of topics, whether it's climate, crises, et cetera. And I wonder for you all, wisdom in not only your own lived experiences and from your countries and the contexts in which there's conflict, but how do we speak to young people who might have grown up, all they know is conflict, all they know is crises. Each of your countries have generations of children born in trauma. What do we say to not only them, but in particular, because it's an American audience, what are some of your takeaways from not only John Lewis, but in your own experiences that we can then give to, the younger generation, not even the next, because we still got a group that we got to focus on right now, and how do we give them aspects of hope?
I think it's about being transparent, being accountable, being up there, doing and leading up front, be seen doing what you are preaching about. and that establishes trust. We have this issue where the young generation are frustrated, and they can't find role models to influence them. So it's about being the leader that influences them positively, but also being upfront and showing them what is right, and they can trust you. Yeah.
Trust and transparency is pretty critical. As community leaders and individuals, we need to continue to build those relationships. It's really important. Thank you.
I think it's also a challenge for those who were able to actually see those problem with our young ones today, our generations today, and it's about them, making them involved and make them part of the process, making them feel that they are the expert in addressing those issues that they are actually experiencing would be a great way to impact them, and for them as well to feel that the result of those change is them. I mean, they are actually the first hand who will experience that. And so I think that's one thing that we can do. Thank you.
Yeah, empowering through engagement, right? Getting people involved. Okay, I love that. I was asking, in particular, two things. Please feel free to answer the previous question about what you took away from your trip through the American South, but then also for the next generation. I know Haiti's population is overwhelmingly under the age of 25.
Yes.
How do we engage young Haitians when they have grown up in generation after generation of unrest and conflict, and how do we encourage them to move forward?
Okay. I'm going to go with the questions that I missed. I'm sorry. My learning, I started with the Good Trouble movie, and I burst into tears after that movie, and I kept saying that, oh my gosh, I don't have the courage, I don't have the courage, is it too late? And then I read the book, and going into the trip, and in the book, my book is full of comments. It's like I was talking to John Lewis, and I imagine sitting with him by the fireplace and then asking him all these questions. Mm-hmm. And then I see similarities in my context. And I said, oh, I need to share this with the youth. Or, oh yeah, this is what we do. And there are two things that just really stayed with me is time and patience. I work with communities that have learned helplessness and learn to act as society describes them. Is the 49% of people living in war settings in Haiti. They are excluded from within, and they know the sting of exclusion is really painful. And as a child, I felt it. My dad used to be a pastor, and he would be in the rural settings. And then when he decided that to send us to school in the city, and I didn't have a name because people will call me enfant, like child, even though the name, it's a way for them to say to me that no matter how well I dress, I'm wearing the same shoes as them, but because I didn't speak French well, and I was enfant. And that really stayed with me to the point that I begged my dad to remove me from the school, from the city, and so I can continue in the countryside. So as I read the book, and then I realized that it's not so much that I don't have courage. That's not what John Lewis would tell me. I cannot focus on not having enough courage, meaning that I didn't want to engage the state of Haiti. I was really scared. For 10 years, I didn't want to. And but the community pushed me to engage the state. They say that we want to engage with the state. So all of that, going through the trip and seeing firsthand what he went through as a young man, and Madeline, don't get emotional.
That's okay. It's emotional.
As a young man, it's like reliving, because in Haiti, we don't have a museum that we can go through to see all these things that have happened. But it's just like we're one humanity. And even though right now we don't have a civil, I mean, we're fighting in Haiti for different things, but we are a divided country. We are a divided community, societal. We have like a pecking order in our society. We use language for exclusion. We use education for exclusion. The place you were born for exclusion. My grandmother had a birth certificate that says peasant. She was not a citizen, she was a peasant, and it's on her birth certificate, so that already she's excluded even on her birth certificate. So the language of John Lewis is my language. And when I said, when you ask us, 3 words, courage, I think that courage to tell his story to the young people of Haiti. I have pieces that I highlighted throughout the book that I said to translate in Creole. Mm-hmm. And for your second question about the young people have been partners from the beginning, since we started to engage communities. Our first community, the high school, we had one high school student. He was 27 years old when he graduated. And so we started to engage kids in 6th grade. They were the one taking notes during meetings. They were the one that were trained to be co-researchers, to do evaluation and assessment. And you know that fast forward 15 years later, they all get licenses in the city and came back to take over their community. They are the nurses that are running the clinic. We have 15 teachers that have came back. One of them is the principal of the school running it, 500 kids. We have, I told this story before, the women that studied the microcredit program with WACS, and now they send young people to get bank support services, and they came back to take over. So during our action research, the young people that I train as co-researchers, they looked at me in the eye and said, teach us what you know. And then so it was their enduring consequences of that research was for me to train them. And so far we trained 17 of them. They are called Community Engagement Catalysts, and they're the ones that are doing work way better than I can possibly do. And then they're going places that I can't even reach right now. So passing on the baton, passing on the message, this is what I should have the courage to continue to do. And so they can do much better work than I can possibly do.
Well, you've laid the foundation, so thank you very much.
I think, Imani, your question is like a $1 million question we are all struggling with right now. So thank you for making our job very easy. When you have a young generation who lack patience, like this is by nature of their age, they want to see results very quickly. Yep. And then you are dealing with these rigid institutions. They're not necessarily evil institutions, but they are rigid institutions that any change will take time. And how to bridge the gap and how to bridge the speed between people who want to see results very quickly and institutions that the decision making gonna take a lot of time. This is a very high tension that I think we are trying to address in so many ways. And my message for all young people that there are no quick fixes. Unfortunately, like this is the sad part, that we cannot, the change cannot come as quickly as they want, but it will come by persistence and patience, and something that you have referred to at the beginning. But I think the most important thing of how to make change is to have a dialogue. And the dialogue, a lot of people think of dialogue and dismiss it as a very easy act, but it's not an easy act. It is actually a very important act of resistance. It takes a lot of things, but the most important thing about dialogue is the moral empathy. So when people talking to each other, they have to see the human in the other. So when we're talking about institutions, these institutions are made of people. Yeah. People who have families, and they have friends, and they care about their families, and there is a certain we can communicate and connect with them on that human level. Yep. There is no way that you and I and different cultures, different backgrounds, that we cannot connect with each other on this level. So my message for the young people is there are no quick fixes. We have to harness this moral empathy. It's a skill. It's not gonna you wake up in the morning and you're gonna do it. You have to practice it, and sometimes you're gonna do a good job. Sometimes you will not gonna do a good job. Yeah. So it's more of like interaction and having dialogue and having belief that we are all working for the same purpose. But sometimes we're having different methods of expressing the way that we want to achieve, which is fighting against injustice and all of that. Yeah.
Patience.
Patience, definitely.
Patience. Okay, so for those who are taking notes, that's one of our key points here. Patience and peace building, building legacies, maintaining connections. Okay, this is good stuff. There's going to be a pop quiz at the end. Just spoiler alert, I am an academic. But yes, please.
Thank you. So I would like to start with a phrase from John Lewis that he said about, talking about young people, speak up and speak out, because I think it's something that keep going us to our purposes. But also, I will add something to this, and it's manners matters. So, with this, I will say that comes to me the connections between nonviolent action and peace building, because I think to be an activist commitment with the nonviolent action and peace building start with ourselves. Start from our inner, soul, I would say. Could be romantic, but it's not romantic. I think it's really hard to be commitment with ourselves first and then with the others. So I'm amazed to see how young people today can discover themselves as an activist, and most of them can be convinced for different causes to go forward, to struggle with these causes. I'm really amazed that it's happening right now all over the world. I could say about your question in the beginning, I discovered myself as an activist, just a few years ago. No, not since I was 20 years. So I can see now very young people saying or discovering themselves as an activist. And for me, it's really amazing to see that. But also, I will add that part about what is really to be an activist with nonviolence, which is really not only actions, it's also part of the life. It's a lifestyle for me, because it starts with ourselves. So for me, manners matters in this case.
Manners do matter. My mother would agree with that wholeheartedly. Yes, sir, please. And I believe there was a point for some questions from the audience. So I will say we're going to have Monsieur answer, but if there are any questions, I believe we do have some mic runners. And so if you want to just go ahead and raise your hand, I see one in the back already. We'll get to you in one moment. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you for the question. When looking some pictures, I come across a photo of John Lewis talking to high school students. Mm-hmm. So I capture that image as a responsibility that we have, we adults, to really tell story to young generation. I could even imagine if I were at the place of those young people listening to John Lewis talking. This is a strong chance I have in the life to really receiving direct message from Congressman Lewis. Yeah, I think what we share with my colleagues as a situation in our context is we have young countries. In Africa, for example, the average age is 14 for the entire continent. So the young people will really decide in the future of Africa, the future of my country.
Yes.
And if we do nothing about that, so we'll got really strong trouble if we don't do something today about that. So when we came to learn from the young generation, 15 years, adolescents, it's age of identity. They want to discover themselves. They want to associate themselves with someone. And in this exercise of identification, they find, for example, they don't have a father. The father is a thief. The father is violent. The father is really a bad father. And this creates some troubles in that generation. There's a violence in the city, so they want to associate themselves with gangs in the city because they are really looking for their identity. So we should really work on that area, and it's also the matter of psychosocial support that we provide to those young men so that they can manage their identity themselves. They can really know how to cope with challenges, how to cope with problems that they are really seeing in the society. Secondly, countries put a lot of effort, a lot of resources to resolve conflict. But then they don't put effort in preventing conflict. So there are really few resources in prevention. And it's really very important when thinking prevention, we really think about the youth engagement, the young generation, the young people. And lastly, it's also the problem of information, quality information that young people have to receive at their age. I remember my personal experience. I've spent years in school, but I've never learned about nonviolence, for example. I've never learned about gender equality, for example. So the curricula itself is still very empty, doesn't touch a lot of issues that are very important. Peacebuilding, for example. So those are concept, reality that you discover very late in your life. So, and it's good to really have good information at earlier age, extracurricular activity where we can really insert notion of nonviolence, notion of equality, notion of peace building, gender. So all those information. So we can't just condemn young people that they don't know. Yeah. So there are also some missing information through their growth that they've never known if no one told them about it.
Yeah, that's a really poignant point, actually, and thank you. And we could obviously continue this conversation for another 2 hours and not even remotely get to everything. But I did want to turn it over for the sake of time to, I thought I saw a question. Yes, sir, if you'd just like to stand up and introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Gabriel Rojas. I work for the USIP office in Colombia. Just passing by these 3 days, and I was lucky enough to be in this conversation. So I just heard that you were talking about trauma, doing this trip, trauma in the United States. You were talking about how this society has learned from this civil rights movement, but still has the consequence of all those traumas in the late 60s still alive. Maybe a lot of polarization that we're seeing right now in the United States is related to that. So my question to you is the opposite to what I'm telling you, that what you're taking back home. Now, what are you bringing to the United States? What would you recommend to the United States? Do they need a transitional justice mechanism to deal with the racial segregation? Do they need a peace-building approach to what has happened in the last 40 years related to racial segregation? And from what you learn from John Lewis, also from what you bring from your countries, what would you say they should do in this particular moment in which they're deciding the fate of their republic right now? So it's an open question for whoever wants to answer.
Glad that one wasn't from me. Okay. All right. That was good. That was a good question.
It's a very important question. I think what I noticed about the United States, that there is a lot of concentration on the individual, which is very important, and I get it. But then there is this dismissal for the the collective, or being part of a tribe or part of a group, which really means that you have to put your a lot of priorities just to take take a step down in order for the benefit of the collective, and I missed that here. And I think maybe in our parts of the world there is a lot of emphasis on the family, on the tribe, on the group, and the affiliation that we come from, and we as an individual we take a step back, and maybe, I don't know, but maybe this is one thing that could be shared with the society here.
That's powerful. Okay. Go ahead. Whoever else.
Yeah.
This is my understanding. Many of the issues could be handled by people in the communities. But we tend to put in the label that these are bigger issues and big organizations, big institutions, big knowledge is needed to address them. And that's just my attitude. When I see an issue, I find ways around how to handle them. And that's what government and the systems need to look into. I continue to say, for every issue in our communities, there's a local solution. Where you find the issue, the solutions are there nearby. It's when we think it's too complicated, it needs medical practitioners, it needs so much money to do it, and we give it time to continue to live and cause problems, keep people in isolation and suffer more. The way I do back there, where I see opportunities to mobilize people and get hands-on, I do it. Issue I find, I don't have the resources. I don't have the support. But we use whatever's around us to deal with people who are traumatized, people who are living in and being punished, who are suffering from social reaction-related violence, people who are victims of tribal violence. We have a government that doesn't connect with us. We don't have good governance, so basically the government system doesn't deliver. Yeah? Even in perfect governments, there are flaws. Yeah? So I think it's about trusting people with skills and resources around us in addressing some of these issues. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, from my country, when we see America, we see it as a very rich country, powerful country. Yeah, and this gives some credit to America as a country. So America should continue to build its credibility based on values. I think those are messages that we receive when we are in our countries. From our trip, we analyzed as a team the civil rights movement and the achievements, and we are very happy that most of the achievement was done at society level, at political level, really strong laws, strong acts that the civil rights movement succeeded. But we found that families, individuals in African American communities are still very fragile. So our recommendation is how to work on a collective and individual trauma from the history so that we can have strong African American families and individuals, men and women, very strong, proud to be American. They don't fear the police. They know how the laws works in the US. They can follow the laws really with proud, with a kind of proud. So that's our recommendation. So my recommendation, based on our observation, what we saw.
Thank you.
Well, for me, I had a chance to live in the U.S. and also, work in Haiti, live in Haiti. And I moved to a very poor neighborhood in St. Paul, Minnesota. The late Paul Farmer came to spend a weekend at our place. He was like, I've never seen an immigrant that will move into a very poor neighborhood by choice. But I think that I got to live with the poor and in the US and in Haiti. And I think that when the gentleman that asked the question about reparation and trauma, and I think all of it will have its place because I think they all are important. But also, what I see, just like James brought the issue of the collective, and communities work together to lift each other up. And in our little neighborhood, that's what we did. We created a space for young people to come together. We talked about everything that's going on in the community. And what I found is just like when as a group, we're suffering the same thing, and then we come together as a collective, and each one teach one, and then give unpassable worth, because on my side, there were drug dealing, and on the streets, there was prostitution going on. And then you have kids running. So how do we change this space and this community? When I graduated from the University of Minnesota, I brought a bunch of kids with me. And they said they've never set foot. They said, wow, you graduate here? I said, yes, you're an A student. You can go here. And I think that when the collective gets together, and I think it's very important in part of creating that space in each community to share our grievances, to heal together. If some of us made it, like I graduated in nursing, what's my responsibility of talking to those young people that I spent time with during the summer, planting cherries and strawberries? Yes, they belong to that university, and yet they can go to that university. It is your country. And if I, as an immigrant, I can attend, yes, you can attend. It's your state. So I think the community is really an important space for that trauma care, for that healing, for everything to happen. So we can do the work of non-exclusion. We can do this work, I count, and everything. But at the end, what is left is a broken community. And then so what can we do together to bring that community up? And I think that community, I cannot say that enough, because that's exactly what I work on in Haiti, creating spaces for each community to gather. They call it their therapy place. So we bring people in to just talk about trauma, about healing, about everything. So I think that will be my 2 cents of that.
Thank you. Philippines?
I'd like to share my recommendation for the question. It was really very good and an opportunity for us to share as well. Acknowledging those atrocities that have done during the past time is a very important move in order for us to connect with the community, especially for those who've suffered violence and trauma. And connecting with them by having that understanding with what they've experienced from the past is a very important way of connecting and making them feel that the government cares for them and that the government would want to build good relationship with them. Our country in the Philippines have experienced this type of issues, and we've been colonized by the Americans. Different atrocities have done, but they are reaching out and trying to address those atrocities that have done in the past. And I think it has been a great movement from the America to heal and help lend their hand in making the Bangsamoro people, the Filipinos, to understand how they care and how they want to build and cure those relationships that we've got, because we've had good relationships, we've had good history. And making them, the community, making them again feel that they are the experts, and understanding from the government side, those messages, positive messaging, reaching to these communities, making them really understand the programs that they are working to address those issues and to address those challenges is very important, as they will be the one who would lay over their hand. And I think as we've understand the communities that we've been working on, those those communities that have experienced violence and trauma, they don't actually want to dwell in those past memories. They also want to move on. And they've been really waiting as well for an acknowledgement, and from someone, those who've done wrongs to them, reach out and apologize, because they are willing and they want to take part in seeing the peace that they want to see, and they really want to mend relationship. And I think that's one thing that I can share based on the experience that we've had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just short answer to your question, Gabriel. Thanks for that. I will say that my answer will be the same to any country in the world, not only to US, because I think this is something regarding to human being. I mean, in terms of we need to go back to the simple things in life, in terms of try to heal our souls, our relationships between us. So I would say that we need to be more mindful what we are doing right now as a world, as a society all over the world. We need to go to simple things in terms to be perhaps worry about complexities, which of course are happening, but at the same time we are perhaps losing our time in many things around, instead of being, in simple but necessary things in the world that as a human we are losing. So in that, for me, something that is really not simple is the core, is put in the center the human being. And it means you recognize the other, you listen the other, you treat with respectful the other. So that's my suggestion, not to this society, to every society in the world. This is something necessary to take into account as a peace builders. Yeah.
Again, we could continue this conversation for hours, but in particular, we're going to continue this conversation at our reception. So I want to thank all of you all. I hope you learned and took away some really key points around not only connection, this conversation was really powerful, crisis, but the patience and peace building. We do have one more, just a couple remarks. And we have our colleague who will come up, and then we will wrap this conversation up. Thank you all.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Collins, chair of the John and Lillian Miles Lewis Foundation. I'm honored to be here at the end. I was honored to be here at the beginning of your journey. It's been wonderful to stand in the back and listen to your insights on John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, as I always say. And, you know, of many things come across my mind. But first, let me thank the Institute of Peace for shepherding this amazing experience for all of you and for us at the foundation. And I want to thank Detria Everson for making sure that the foundation and John and Lillian Miles Lewis's name and spirit is infiltrated here in this experience. So thank you, Detria, for ensuring that. And thank you, Institute of Peace. So many thoughts. I had the opportunity to meet the congressman when I was a freshman in college. And I had the wonderful opportunity to re-engage with him when I was finishing my graduate studies in Boston. And he and Senator Kennedy were hosting a book signing of his first book, Walking with the Wind, and so a memoir of the movement. And then a few years later, had an opportunity to go and join him in his congressional office and work for him as his floor assistant and chief of staff for 21 years. And I say all that because I have had the most unbelievable privilege of literally sitting, as the congressman would say, next to him, aside with him. And it is an honor to listen to each and every one of you, to understand that you came here from your respective countries and your own beliefs, your own purposes and goals, to come and study about John Lewis. And he would be honored. He would be privileged to feel that you took that time to do this in his name. You're right, the congressman was humble. He was patient. He was kind. The man that we all talk about and kind of sit in a room and try to figure out who he was a very simple man. He was a man who grew up on a farm in Troy, Alabama, with a loving family and a faith, none other, that led him. His faith led him all the way to Congress. And he would say that the civil rights movement in Congress was an extension of his faith. His family, a loving family. So those values, they all came from that single farm in Troy, Alabama. And so as you talk about the complexities of that man, just know they all have a beginning, as we all do. And we can't forget. He would always talk about not forgetting where you came from. And he never forgot where he came from. So as you go back to your countries and take John Lewis's spirit with you, just know that you come from someplace. Don't forget about it. And don't forget about what he came from, because he was really a simple man and he had a simple message of love and peace. And he carried that everywhere he went. He never missed an opportunity to talk about peace and love. He loved everybody. And as you saw in the movies and read in the books, every day he walked around. He walked around living what he believed. He would say, "Good day, my brother. Good day, my sister." And he believed it. It was who he was. He felt it. He carried it. He never shied away from who he was at any time. He would sit in the meetings with the President of the United States. He would sit, we had a little joke going on. He would call himself a saint. And I'd say, Congressman, you're no saint. Because I think Time Magazine called him a saint. He and Mrs. Clinton traveled to Mother Teresa's funeral. but he truly loved people. He loved every human being. He would say he never hated anybody because hate was too heavy a burden to bear. And so again, as you have taken on this mantle, and I'm so honored that I got to know Congressman Lewis, that I knew he would be honored that you took this time to study him, to travel, to learn, to read, to watch, to listen. I wish you good speed and do all that you can do to carry on his spirit and all the great work that you do already. So thank you again. And I have one last reception outside. I also have one last deed. Dr. Cheers? Yes. Hi, I have a gift for you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you. Take care. Thank you all.
Thanks for coming.